You know, there was a time in Jesus' ministry where he went around and he headed to Jerusalem one day. He was going to one of the Jewish festivals, and he came across this bathing area, this pool, and there were all these people with disabilities. Some couldn't hear, they couldn't talk, they couldn't see. Some of them hadn't been able to move for much time. And Jesus, he notices this guy that's off to the side. He hasn't been able to walk for 38 years. And friends, check this out. Jesus goes over to him, and this is what he asks. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" Now, friends, think about that for a moment. What a curious question. Do you want to get well? Is that really what you want? Friends, let me ask you, if Jesus came to you today and said, "Hey, do you want to get well?" what would you say? I imagine that for many of us, we'd say, "Yes, yes, of course, Jesus, of course I want to get well." But let me ask you, do you really? In other words, are you willing to do whatever it takes to get well wherever that path may lead you? You see, for the evil queen at the end of the day, she didn't actually want to get well, because she knew that to do so, she would have to be brutally honest with herself. She would have to admit to herself that she was not the fairest in the land. But you see, she couldn't do it. And so she continued to live in her fantasy world, ruled and controlled by her sinful and deceitful heart. You see, friends, the first step in getting well is admitting the truth even when it makes you feel bad about yourself. In other words, when we look into the mirror and we see ourselves for who we truly are, we admit what we actually see before us. Where we look in the mirror and we say, "Hey, I have an anger problem. I have a drinking problem. I harbor bitterness towards my spouse. I harbor jealousy toward my neighbor. I point out people's imperfections and flaws because I'm insecure myself. I'm lonely. I'm impatient. I don't know who I am. I don't know who I've become. I don't know who I want to be. I'm lost. I feel disconnected from God." You see, friends, when we face the reality in the mirror and we admit exactly what we see, it's because at some point we're tired of ignoring. We're tired of pretending. We're tired of living in our fantasy world, ruled and controlled by our sinful and deceitful heart. And so we cast this mirror upon our hearts, and we see ourselves. We're honest with ourselves. We admit what we see. We admit the truth, and we say, "God, I want to get well." You know, if you think about it, that's our Christian story. That for many of us here, for weeks and months and years, some of us spent all this time trying to sell ourselves on the notion that we were enough. That as long as we were good people and we did good things, certainly God would accept us. But you see, what you and I and all of humanity were unwilling to tell ourselves is that we are by our very nature sinful and unclean. That there is nothing we can do to reconcile or make right with God. But you see, deep down, we desired to get well. And so we turned to the one who can make us well, who can heal us of our sickness, who can cleanse us of our sin. Friends, when you receive the gospel by faith, that was your John chapter 5 moment with Jesus when he said, "Hey, do you want to get well?" And you said, "Yes, yes, Jesus, I want to get well. I've looked in the mirror. I admit that I'm a sinner. And I admit that I need a Savior. And Jesus, I recognize that you are that Savior that took my sin to the cross and dealt with it for me." You see, friends, our Christian story of faith provides us a blueprint for how we can be honest with ourselves so that we can make honest and better decisions throughout our lifetime.